Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of the Santander and Action Coach workshops. Today we are on leadership with our action coach all the way from Scotland, Alan, and over to you, Alan. Take it away for us.
Okay, great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is safe and well. Let me start with a belief then. So we're talking about leadership and management. Let me start with a belief. My belief is that you cannot grow a business. Now, that's a bizarre thing to say from a business coach, but you cannot grow a business. You can, however, grow people, and it's the people who grow the business. So coaching is a people business. And when it comes to the subject of leadership and management, I'll be honest with you and say that I actually struggle to have a conversation about leadership without having an equally weighted conversation about management, because in my opinion, they are two sides of the same coin. You know, this is a people business. This is a people situation here. And if you think about it, if you have great leadership and no management, well, what do you get? What you get is you get excited people who are passionate, but they've got no clue about what and how to do stuff. Effectively, you've got their hearts, but you've not got their heads. And flip that the other way, if you've got great management but no leadership, what you've got then is people who can do the job, but they don't know where they're going or why they're doing things. Effectively, their heart's not in it. So leadership and management for me, just like coaching, is all about people and about their performance, both individually and collectively. So what I'm going to do over the next 45 minutes or so is cover four things. The first thing I'd like to cover is, what are the desired outputs from management and leadership? So specifically, what are we trying to achieve through our management and leadership? Then I want to just drill into the four things that great managers do and the four things that great leaders do. I want to suggest as well an identity that will serve you really well as you seek to influence your people in a positive manner. And then finally, what I'll do just at the end is I'll invite you to complete what I call a quick team check. And effectively, that is really a way of looking at your business to see how you might be able to get better at both leadership and management. So I'm hoping that that's okay if we proceed on that basis. Okay, Phil, you can tell me if anyone's putting any objections into that as a plan. I don't think there will be. All right. So let's move into the first kind of question I'm going to be asking is about leadership management is about mobilizing individuals to perform. And so really, I'm always interested to kind of know what people see as being a team that they think is world class, because what sits behind world class teams is a number of things, but world class leadership and management. And when I ask the question of, in any sphere, whether it be business, sport, charity, religion, whatever it might be, name me a team that really stands out. The team that always seems to float to the top, and we get people like Google, Apple, we get Barcelona FC, which by the way is my favorite kind of football team, but actually it's the All Blacks. The All Blacks always come out as being kind of one of those teams that people just look at and say they are excellent. So what I want to show you just now is just a 3-minute video that is absolutely loaded, in my opinion, with good management and leadership lessons. So again, let me just play this video, and then what we'll do is we'll just discuss some of the key points that come out of that video. So hopefully this works nicely. Just, can you give me a thumbs up, Phil, just to make sure that you can see and hear the video? Okay.
Children growing up aspire to be All Blacks. I think it's the heart and soul of New Zealand.
I know how much the team meant when I was 6 years old, getting up in the middle of the night to watch the All Blacks play.
When they're in the All Black team, they've been passed on the responsibility of that black jersey with the silver fern. It's their time in that jersey, and it's their responsibility to enhance the legacy. Better men make better All Blacks. That's really about self-improvement. And it's not only about rugby, it's about life. Young men driving together to produce something that they're proud of.
I think it just encompasses that idea of you can always be better, whether it's off the field or on the field, and if you have that characteristic, then you'll be a great All Black.
Good people make great teams, and people that aren't very nice, although they might be superstars, we don't want them. It's about sustaining a culture of success, week in, week out, year in, year out, being the best team in the world. That's our goal.
If you recognise how much of an honour it is to pull on the black jersey, then the jersey will let you do things that you wouldn't have thought possible.
As All Blacks, you're expected to win. And does it give us any advantage to Haka? Without question. It's about going to battle with your friends and your mates, standing shoulder to shoulder.
It's not only about playing great rugby on the rugby field, it's about how these young men conduct themselves off the pitch. That humbleness, keeping your feet on the ground, realising that you can get better all the time.
The legacy of the jersey is more intimidating than any opposition, and the key thing for us as past All Blacks is to make sure that legacy continues.
I'm just very grateful that I got to spend as many years playing, for a team that I loved.
The last 100 years, the All Blacks are the most successful sporting team ever, and long may that continue.
Okay. So again, let me just move on. Yeah. So look, there are loads of things in here that are relevant to the subject of leadership and management. And the reason I like to play that to anyone I ever speak to about this subject is, if you think about it, these guys have had a high level of performance at world-class level from pretty much day dot. So an 86% win rate over 130 years is a pretty impressive feat by anyone's stretch. And I guess that I'm interested in, okay, well, what makes that happen? How can someone or a team of people perform at that high level consistently? So I'm going to just pull out a few things that really kind of have some meaning here. So again, think about what was said, and these are all verbatim quotes from the video. Children growing up aspire to be All Blacks. Imagine if we actually were to have a business or a team that you're leading that actually people wanted to be part of. Well, children want to be part of the All Blacks because they see success. People are attracted to success. They're attracted to a number of things. They're attracted to kind of the way that people go about doing their thing. So what are the things that we could do to actually make our business really attractive to other people? Better men make better All Blacks. The point they make here is actually people come to work, but they spend however many hours per day, but that's not just who they are. We have to see the whole person. So the idea of helping an individual just personally get better as a human being, if we can do that in the workplace so that they are a better quality human being, not judged by us, but judged by them, they want to get better, then actually imagine having a whole army of people all getting better. They become better men, better women, and therefore better team members for the team that they belong to on a day-to-day work basis. Sean Fitzpatrick said, if people aren't very nice, even if they're superstars, we don't want them. So again, in business, how often do we actually have the superstar performer who's maybe pulling in the sales, who's maybe actually really quite good at the job, but is just a rotten interference for the actual team? how do we deal with those kind of people, and so that for the good of the team? That's a management and a leadership situation. The legacy of the jersey is more intimidating than any opposition. So imagine having this scenario whereby any role that you have in your business, so that the person then moving into that role says, gosh, I've got huge respect for the person who did it before me, and my job now is to make sure that that role is even better. Imagine that you've got that kind of internal positive pressure within your teams to perform. Doesn't matter what's happening outside in the marketplace, the competitors, because if you just focus on the team getting better, then actually it's the competition that need to do the worrying, not you. We've got this idea of the legacy of the jersey. It's all about self-improvement, and I think it's that humbleness. I think that we come on to that in the next point around. It's not just about doing the thing that the business does or playing rugby in this instance. It's about how we conduct ourselves off the pitch, and it's the attitude that people bring into work, the humbleness, keeping your feet on the ground, and the appreciation that we can always get better. How do we generate that kind of atmosphere within our business whereby people have a feeling that says it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to say that I'm struggling or I can't do something or I need to get better, because you're going to be supported to perform at a higher level. It's okay to kind of reveal your weakness. Again, what does the culture look? Do people come into work every day expecting to perform at a high level and have that culture of success every single day? What's the tone that you're setting to your team? What do they feel as they come through the door every day? And again, they talked about being the best team in the world. That's our goal. Well, what's your goal as a manager and a leader? What are the goals that we're setting for our team? What's the expectation that we're putting into people's minds as to what we're striving for? Because the All Blacks certainly expect to win. I guess, do you? Or actually, do you sometimes accept less than what you really want? So there's a number of things in there that, and under normal circumstances, we would have a right good conversation, but the nature of this webinar is such that I'll maybe just move on from there. But hopefully there's a lot in there that kind of gets you thinking about, okay, what's the climate that I set within my team or my business? Because if I were to kind of share with you a cornerstone philosophy that we hold at Action Coach, and it goes right the way through everything that we do in business, is that we have this concept called above and below the line. And the line effectively represents the line of choice. So it's our belief that how you perform in life is a choice, and there are some attributes of low performance and attributes of high performance. And I just want you to look at this and see, what do you recognize in your business, in your team? Because what we see all too often happening is that people are going what we would call below the line. They are pointing the finger of blame when things go wrong. They're maybe coming up with excuses when a situation happens or doesn't happen that should have. Or, we get people burying their heads in the sand, ignoring problems or hoping the problem will actually go away. And frankly, we're not going to do anything of any value when we've got that kind of thing going on. And yeah, I say it now, it's three simple words, but we see it all the time, dragging a business down, because that's the culture that is being created, if you like. And actually, we have to kind of put it squarely on the shoulders of the leaders and the managers of the business, because we have this victim mentality that surrounds everyone. And of course, it gets us nowhere. The arrow kind of points backwards. It's a really backward moving situation. You can't move forward with that kind of environment. Now, what we're wanting to do, good management will get rid of blame, excuses, and denial. So we always say, look, if you see these things happening in your business or in your team, then it's really down to two things. One, you've recruited badly. Now, if you've recruited badly, then guess what? And the point there being is, look, we've managed to kind of get this person into our business. How on earth did they arrive if they're like that? Now, if they're like that, you have to go back through to the recruitment process and say, what went wrong that allowed that person to come in? Now, assuming that you've got a good recruitment process that puts in all the checks and balances, then you have to then go to the next place that says, well, it's because that individual hasn't been managed correctly. They're not managed correctly, and I'll explain that in a short minute. So good management gets rid of that, and ultimately what we're trying to promote it through our leadership are the above the line behaviors, which really creates that victor mentality, which is ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And you'll notice that if the line almost represents a little bit like a mirror image, because of course, what's the opposite of blame? When people point the finger of blame, what's the opposite of that? You take down responsibility for your actions. Any excuses? Well, excuses don't happen in a high performing team. People hold themselves to account. What is it was expected of them? Have they met or not met that expectation? And you hold yourself to account and you make the necessary adjustments to put it right. And then you don't get people burying their head in the sand, because people are wrapping their arms around the problem when they spot it and saying, right, okay, what do we need to do about that? You have much more of a victor mentality, and it's much more forward moving. Our job as managers and leaders is to create an above the line atmosphere every single time. So again, a question just to pose and maybe leave hanging with you is, which sets of behaviors do you see most often within your team? I hope it's the above, but I would suspect that, if people are really honest, there's quite a lot of the red stuff going on. So I said that there was going to be an identity that I was going to suggest that would be helpful for you if you were to get the most positive influence on the people that are within your team. And I guess the most, I'll give you the opposite, the unhelpful identity, which I often see with business owners, who of course are the managers and leaders of their business, and that it's the identity of, I'm the superhero. Because the superhero, what I mean by that is, now they won't obviously say that they're the superhero, but the way that they actually speak suggests that actually they are the person that it can fix all the problems. No one can do things as well as me. I can do it much quicker. If you want a job done right, then do it yourself. That's the kind of words that we would hear of the superhero. And we jokingly say, like, those kind of people, take joy almost in tying the shoelaces for their team. Now, it's a ridiculous but it's a simple thing to say. You're going to have to, at some point when you've got a child, you're going to have to teach them, of course, to tie their shoelaces, but then over time, let them tie their own. But yet we get an awful lot of this superheroitis, whereby there's still a lot of fixing of other people's problems. Now, if that's the negative identity to have as a leader or manager, what would be more positive? Well, look, we frame it this way. What about an identity that you accept to say, I am a people builder. My job is to build people. Because these are the kind of things that you would do if you're a people builder. If someone comes to you with a question or a problem or a situation, typically they might be looking for an answer. But the best thing that you could possibly do is to ask them some questions, get them thinking, keep the speech bubble, so to speak, above their, not the thought bubble, I should say, above their head, get them doing the thinking. When it comes to kind of performance, get them to review, look, how do you think you're doing? And where would you see your strengths, and where would you see kind of your areas to develop? Makes the conversation far better that way than you imposing a judgment on them. What we're trying to do here is build the resilience in our people so that they can perform effectively on their own without being reliant upon us having to be there all the time. We're not there to tie their shoelaces for them. And of course, what comes with that identity is the need to understand that you've got to be patient, because you're going to train people. You've got to train people so that they can perform, and training takes time. Yes, you know what to do, you know how to handle the situation, but maybe some people don't. But you have to be patient, and you have to invest in people. So we really are strong on the identity of become a people builder, and it's one of the most helpful things that how you can see yourself, because it changes the way you think about the people that are around you. And again, I deliberately say around you. I don't like kind of people beneath you, below you, horrible sets of words. You work with and through people. They're all around you. They are equals. They just happen to perform different roles within the organization. Okay, so I said I'd tell you about the 4 things that what are the key outputs of management and key outputs of leadership, and what do good leaders and managers do? Well, let me be really clear. There are 2 things that we're trying to do with good management. A good manager will be looking to create competent and productive people. We want people who know what they're doing, how to do it, and they can do it to the standards, the quantity and the quality that is expected of them. That's what we're looking to do. Now, how do you do that? Well, again, we like to kind of frame this in kind of 4 ways, right? The first thing that we need to do is give clarity to our people. Again, you cannot meet an expectation that hasn't been set. Yet, all too often, we hear people saying, I actually don't know what's expected of me. I really don't know. How do you know if you're doing a good job? I don't know. All I know is that the boss hasn't come and smacked me over the head. It's a terrible place to be. So one of the biggest causes of workplace stress is role ambiguity. People just don't know what is expected of them. So there are 3 things that we like to kind of give people clarity upon. First one is the role itself. So again, rather than recruiting for someone and saying, oh gosh, I need to get a job description, I'll go and get a similar one off the internet, which we see quite a lot happening, is does the role description accurately reflect what you expect that role to do? So we need to get crystal clear on that. And then what are the numbers that support the role? So I mentioned the quality and the quantity metrics. What are the key outputs from that role? And actually some people call them KPIs or key performance indicators, measures of success, call them what you will, but actually, how do we know if that person is doing a good job? We need to be clear on that. It's helpful, isn't it, for people to come into a role to say, okay, I know what I'm doing and I also know how I'll be measured on whether I'm doing a good or bad job. And then the last part is behaviors and standards. So again, if you think about some of the challenges that we have as managers and leaders, is when we end up in conversations about behaviors. Right, well, with two things. One is underperformance because we're not hitting the numbers. Now, actually, that's much easier for us to address underperformance when we've got an objective set of numbers. People say they've got less challenge having a management conversation around underperformance on numbers. They find it really hard when it comes to talk about behaviors. How on earth do you give clarity on behaviors and standards that you're setting? I'll come on to that in a wee second, but that's the definition of values or teamship rules, if any of you have ever read Clive Woodward's work. Okay, because what we're trying to do with clarity is shift from blame to responsibility. And the way I always like to kind of do this is, the background image there is one of the baton, and it's effectively like saying, look, if I want to hand over responsibility to you, if you're on listening in here, I'm handing this. Can you see what I'm doing here, Phil? Yeah. So if I'm handing over this baton, I'm not going to let go of this baton until I know you've got a grip on the other side and that you know that you've got it. So I'm going to be checking, saying, look, Phil, have you got this? Do you understand everything? Do you understand the role, the numbers, the behaviors? Okay, you've got it. Great. I can now let go and let you run with it. It starts the process of responsibility. But if I haven't done that, then it's going to be really easy for people to say, well, you didn't tell me what the role was, or I didn't know what the standard was. So clarity really helps shift us to a position of responsibility. Okay, we then kind of talk about the next thing. Once you've set an expectation, we want people to measure themselves against that expectation. How am I doing? So what gets measured gets managed is the mantra that I know that you'll have heard before, but it absolutely is true. And what we're wanting to try and create here is a state of optimal pressure for people to perform. So I've got Muhammad Ali in the background here. Muhammad Ali, obviously everyone knows who he was. He put himself into states of pressure every single day during training. He was famously asked, okay, what's the how many sit-ups do you do in training? He said, well, I don't know. because I never count. I only start counting when it starts to hurt. Because he was effectively saying, how do I push myself out of the comfort zone as quickly as I can, get myself into a growth zone and stay there for as long as I can, such that I can stretch the muscle and actually start to expand the comfort zone, so that come the time I go to performance zone in the ring, I'm there, I can perform. So we want to create that pressure for our people to be able to kind of rise to the challenge. We also want to have regular conversations with people. So again, how often are people doing one-to-ones? Checking in on, look, how's it going? Look, let's sit down and see how you're going against what's been expected. It's an opportunity to course correct when you're a bit off track, but it's also an opportunity that a lot of people lose to say, look, bloody well done. You're doing a cracking job. Keep it up. How about if, what's the next challenge for you? Right. So regular conversation is an essential part of management. A lot of people say, oh, I've let this problem build up. When did you last address it? Oh, at the review 6 months ago. So you've not had a conversation about performance in 6 months. Whew. Okay. And then the third thing, I refer to a third thing, is if I'm looking at you, Phil, in the in the camera just now, if I've got a conversation with you and we have to talk about your performance, actually it has the potential to be quite a stingy conversation, because I'm going to have to say, Phil, it's going to be a bit awkward, but I need to pull you up on certain things, your numbers or your behaviors. And it's kind of my opinion, it's subjective, it's mine versus yours. And you say, well, I don't agree with that. The third thing is introducing something almost to the side of the conversation that says, let's not look at each other. Let's get both eyes on this, which is a previously agreed set of measures or behaviors or standards that we both sign up to, that we both know about, and just say, look, how are you going? How are you going versus that? It's much more objective, and it allows us to have a better quality conversation when you've got that objectivity in a measurement conversation. So those things there, I'm going through these very quickly because I want to make sure that you get the kind of the key points, and then there's more that we can do following up from this webinar. But we're effectively moving people from excuses to accountability. We don't want excuses. They're an absolute waste of everyone's time. What we want to do is how do we get people to hold themselves to account? So once we've got that clarity in the measurement in place, now the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we're giving our team systems to follow. So again, consistency is the foundation for healthy growth. Now, actually, the image behind this is actually from the film The Founder, which was all about McDonald's. I don't know if you've seen that one. Great film with Michael Keaton. But actually, McDonald's is a business that is just phenomenal in its run-off systems. But the idea here is that we want to make sure that the only way that we're going to grow a business is through having a leverage mindset. How do we actually kind of break the process down? So we talk about leverage, meaning, to divide to multiply. Or do the work once, get paid long term. Well, actually, what the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc did effectively was break down the process of making hamburgers and getting them in people's mouths fast. Now, this idea of breaking things down was really essential. So we need to give people a clear instruction onto how to kind of carry out their job. At the age of 15 or 16, I actually worked in McDonald's up in Stirling in Scotland. And effectively, on day one, I could stand at the burger station. I could turn out a Big Mac just by following step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Because I followed the system effectively, which was the hard system. How do I actually kind of follow a system that allows me to kind of produce? I'll finish this. Because I could do that, I had ownership. I had ownership for that role. I had ownership for the role. I could do the job. Again, it wasn't a case of, I don't know how to do this job. Well, I blooming do, because I've got the system written in front of me. I just have to follow it. And then the other system there is the soft systems. A lot of businesses are maybe a little bit better on the hard systems, which is, okay, how do you actually flip the burger and produce the Big Mac? That would be an example of a hard system. A soft system is, okay, what does the people process look like? How do you kind of, what does the review mechanism look like for people's performance? Our objectives set at the start of the year. Do we have regular one-to-ones? Is there a kind of quarterly appraisal, and so on and so on? Are there personal development plans? That tends to be shoddily done at best, if at all. So systems is a key thing. And then finally, this idea of training. Once you've got a system, all using the example of McDonald's, all my supervisor really needed to do in the McDonald's store was look over my shoulder and say, okay, you're following the system, Alan, well done. Maybe think about doing it this way or do that bit faster. He or she was there to give me additional instruction to help me drive my productivity against the system. People can only perform to the level to which they've been trained. So again, we've got Barcelona in the background. I said they're my favorite football team, but actually, can you imagine Barcelona saying publicly, right, okay, we just haven't got time for training. We're not going to do training through the week, but we're going to turn up at weekends for the games, right? It just would never happen. It's a ridiculous scenario. Yet actually, often people say we just don't have time for training. Oh, wow. We've got to make time for training if we want our teams to perform. So what are the things we need to train people on? Well, look, first of all, we want to make sure that we've got a good understanding of the individual who's been trained. A famous coach, who I forget who it was, famously said, look, you don't coach a team, you coach individuals. So you need to understand what's the right way to kind of coach this person. We need to make sure that we're raising awareness. So actually, some people have things called blind spots. Some people don't know what they're doing wrong and the impact it's having on others. We need to be in a position to kind of to shine a spotlight on people to say, look, did you realize that this is what's happening when you do these things? Equally, did you know just how good you are, and the effect of you doing that thing that you're so good at has this positive effect on everyone? So again, we want to make sure that we're constantly catching people doing things right as well as wrong. And then finally, be the coach. Now, again, this is the subject of an entirely different webinar, but the idea of adopting a coaching approach to how you go about your management and leadership is by far the best way you'll get the most out of people. Coach them. Again, if I said to you, would you rather I acted as your manager or as your coach? I know what you'd say. I want you as my coach because you're there standing beside me. You're there helping me, nurturing me, encouraging me. And the negative connotation of the manager is you're there to thump me over the head when I do something wrong. Be the coach. And at this point here, we're moving people from a passive position of just kind of coasting along in the job. We want to get them to a position of being assertive. We want them to be confident people. We want to surround ourselves with confident people who could stand up straight, forthrightly put forward their opinion, and really kind of say what's right, but also be able to listen as well to what other people have got to say too. Now, there's the 4 things that we would do kind of from a management point of view. I'm deliberately kind of going fast just now, but I want to move on to leadership, because what we want to produce through our leadership is passion and focus in our people. Passionate, focused people is what we want. And the 4 things we say that you do here is we want to enroll people. As a leader, we need to enroll people into a number of things. You've probably heard the phrase before, we want to get the right people on the bus, those people who buy into what we stand for. Again, there's the image there of the astronaut. JFK famously went to one of the space centers at NASA, and I think it was he said to the person in the corridor, "Oh, what's your role here?" And that person said, my role, Mr. President, is to put man on the moon. Now, that person was the cleaner. That person had bought in so much to what the whole operation was trying to do that he saw himself as being an important cog within the overall machine. So what a great level of buy-in there, because we want people to buy into what's this business, this charity, this team all about? What's our purpose? So again, if you want to go and look at purpose, go and watch Simon Sinek talk about why. Why does the business exist? We obviously would need to say, okay, I'm bought into this. I like the idea of it, but show me how you're going to do it. What's the strategy that that we're going to employ? Is there a strategy, or are we just operating from the top of our head through gut feel? Let's lay out some kind of a sensible strategy that people can really rally around. And then how do you engender as a leader this idea of one team? So again, Sean Fitzpatrick said in the All Blacks video there about, even if you're a superstar, if you're not a nice person, we don't want you. This is about the one team approach as opposed to the silos that are often created in businesses. We want to make sure that we win together, not we win as individuals or as individual departments. Because we're wanting to kind of make sure that people move again from being passively involved in the business to being passionate. We really want people to get their hearts connected with what business is all about. So you'll notice here as well that in terms of the symbols that I'm using, the green, the productive and competent people, which you're looking for through management, that's a logical thing, arguably. It's kind of tapping into people's heads. Okay, logically, how do we lay all this out? Leadership's a heart thing. It's about emotionally connecting with our people. But we also need to inspire our people. And again, the famous phrase by Peter Drucker is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think the actual quote is eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So getting your culture right is critical. And really what that is saying, what's the emotional environment? What are you creating? What is that environment like? And I always like to kind of say, like, there's two environments that we need to create for our people. The physical environment, so the place that they come to do their work, is it safe? Is it aspirational? Is it exciting to be in these four walls? But also, is it emotionally the place that I think I can do my best work here? I like being here because I get stretched, I get supported. It's a good emotional environment. Again, we've talked a little bit about defined values. Are your values very well defined? That's what we really want to have, so that people are clear on what's expected from a behaviours point of view. I'm going to show you a really nice example on what I think is best in class, never seen before as good as this, values defined, coming up in a wee second. And then we want to make sure that people, like the schools are currently doing for our kids, thankfully, is teaching a thing called growth mindset. This idea that says, look, we can always be better. Talent isn't something that you're just born with. You can learn to get good at anything. And the idea of the power of yet, okay, I'm not good at that yet, is a far more empowering statement than saying I'm no good at that. That's what growth mindset encourages. So how do we encourage a learning environment within our team? Because we're wanting people again to kind of move away from having a much more transactional relationship with the business to feeling that sense of belonging. Feeling that sense of belonging to the team. And the reason that there's a little kind of penny in the background there, imagery wise, is saying, look, culture and brand are two sides of the same coin. What people see externally is actually driven by the culture of the business. So if you kind of do a great marketing campaign, get lots of good people coming into your business, only to then be greeted by the angry receptionist or the waiter that barks orders or the uninterested salesperson, it's not because of marketing. It's because, or people say, oh, help us get better at customer service. Actually, customer service starts with culture. Get your culture right. That's at the root cause. Okay, we want to communicate extensively as a leader. And there's the rule of 7, which basically says, look, you have to say things 7 times before people in your team are really listening. And I think it was Jack Welch, the CEO of the century for General Electric, who actually said, he says, only at the point at which I feel I'm getting bored of repeating myself are my team actually listening. Are things seeping through? So the rule of 7, we want to make sure that we're listening, just not with our ears. It's a key skill of a leader is to listen to what's going on, but really get a good idea as to look at what's going on as well. It's not just about listening, it's about looking, and it's about feeling as well. Listening with your heart sounds like a bit of an unusual thing to say, but actually, what's the emotion behind what people are really saying and doing? You need to be highly attuned to these things as a leader. We need to listen as well, or communicate the stories of the business. Again, using Jack Welch as an example, he talks famously about how he says, I made a major mistake by buying, I think it was an investment business over in America. He says it was a disaster, and he tells the story of why it was a disaster. But think of the power of the leader, the top guy in that business, saying, I made a major mistake, here's the lessons I learned. It permeates the business of, okay, even he can get it wrong. Mistakes are okay as long as we learn from it. Again, it really helps strengthen the values of the business. And then, of course, we need to talk about the goals for the business. What's the plan? What are the actions? What are these things that we need to do to get the job done? Because we want to make sure that we're moving people to a place of focus. They know what's to be done, rather than people wandering around thinking, I wonder what would be required of me. This idea of moving away from conjecture. And then finally, congratulate. A key leadership act is to find reasons to congratulate your people. You know, this idea of creating the people builder environment and catching people doing things right. And the whale in the background is from a book called Whale Done, which really just, you know, the fundamental kind of message from the book is catch people doing things right, not just about doing things wrong. So how do you role model that kind of behavior? Because people follow in the shadow of the leader. How do you role model the great behaviors you want to see in others? What does that reward and recognition culture look like? You know, how do you put the challenge over to the kind of the wider team that says, okay, how do we really make sure that we capture when people are doing great things? What does reward and recognition look like? And celebrate success. And again, how do we make sure that we encourage people to take risks, to push themselves out of their comfort zone, learn from their lessons, and make sure that we pat people on the back when they've done that? Key things to do, because we want to move people from that position of being a little bit unsure about things to saying, actually, I'm confident, I know myself and also what I need to do. So those are the key aspects of leadership that we would suggest that you spend time getting good at. So the second but last thing I want to show you is a very quick process that we take all of our clients through at Action Coach, and it's called 9 Steps to Mobilization or Team Mobilization. Okay, so first thing, make sure that you are setting a clear vision that explains where you're going to your team. Get them excited about that, but then also lay out the mission. How are we actually going to get there? Because people will be excited about the destination. We want to make sure that people are clear on how they're going to get there. And then how are you going to behave on the way? Define that culture really, really well. And then set some good milestones for what's expected of the team. These 4 things are acts of leadership. Then the next 5 are acts of management, which is, okay, let's organize ourselves. Get a clear organizational chart. Who is going to do what? And then each role within that org chart effectively gives people clarity on what's expected of me. We've got KPIs or key performance indicators that talk about how are we going to measure performance then in each of those roles. Again, the systems, we've covered all this in the previous slide. Okay, how am I going to carry out this role? Again, I refer you back to my my experience in McDonald's at the burger station. And then finally, how are we going to keep things on track? So what does communication look like? Are we setting in motion a nice rhythm to interact with our team and our departments? So that's the kind of the process that we would suggest you go through. And when I invite you to take the quick team check, there's a number of these things that we've gone through, which allows you just to say, look, how good a job am I doing on these things? And actually, what might I need to kind of give some attention to? I said I would share with you an example of the best ever values definition I've ever seen. And this actually, this has now been kind of taken into, it was a photograph that I took whilst at a conference in Edinburgh a few years ago by a charity called B1G1, or Buy One Give One, really is what they're called. A phenomenal charity. I would strongly suggest that you check them out. But what they did was they flashed up their values, and they talked about how they went about their values. Have a look at this. This is a work of art. Imagine being as clear as to say, because again, values are done terribly on average, kind of a couple of words thrown on a wall that people don't even know what they mean. But actually, imagine this. Here's their 6 values. There's 6 values. And then they've started to say, okay, behaviorally, what would be a good example of that value being lived and breathed? Now, the way that they do this is they set out, look, here are, let's take desire to improve as the example. That's a value. And then they know what that means. But then look, here's the kind of things we would be seeing that are below expectations. If we see these things, we need to correct that. But actually also, here are some of the things that actually would demonstrate the desired behaviors, or even the admired leadership behaviors. Real definition going into that. And that's what people need. They need the clarity. So imagine the power of sitting down with someone and having a behavioral conversation, which just says, look, how do you think you're stacking up against open-mindedness? Because look, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing actually, and again, list out some of the below expectations behaviors. How do we get you back above the line? So again, the challenge to you would say, how good could it be if you get your values defined as well as that? Look, the last thing I'm going to end upon is kind of my guru as a leader, and it's a guy called Coach John Wooden from UCLA basketball. Again, everyone will have their own gurus to kind of go to. I particularly go to Coach John Wooden, and he says this: look, compete only against yourself. Set your standards high, namely do the absolute best of which you're capable. Focus on running the race rather than winning it, and do the things necessary to bring forth your personal best, and don't lose sleep worrying about the competition. Let the competition lose sleep worrying about you. It's my hope and belief that you can become an amazingly strong leader and manager. And actually, there are some steps there to follow. If you put those things in place, you will become a great leader, and you will have the kind of people in your team that can perform to world-class levels. So with that, I'll end the session, Rob, and invite any questions.